Welcome everyone to Uncapped Demon Form Project Speed. This is an update video from my previous one, so for anyone that is new, I would suggest please watching that video and those that came before it in terms of providing you with any actual specific build details as to how this build functions. This video is specifically going to focus on the changes that I've carried out in the last 2 days and really highlighting what the goal or the core philosophy of this build has been. So what is that? Well, while many builds out there, provide the fancy instant boss kills, the epileptic inducing, GPU melting, screen-wide effects of multiple spells going off and your whole computer grinding to a halt. My direction with this build has been more towards the practical and efficient end and to try and really push the boundaries of what the class and I guess casters in general could potentially achieve, because if you hear anyone talk about casters, especially in 0.2 and 0.3, when compared to Deadeyes and other classes out there, is that their big failing is speed and efficiency, especially in terms of mapping. Sitting there practically at a standstill to cast our abilities just is not practical and efficient at the very top end of the mapping experience. So the goal really has been to try and push those boundaries. So what have we managed to achieve in the last 2 days? Well, I've gotten my move speed up to 84%. I can get it to 90, but then I sacrifice too many resistances and defensive layers. I've gotten my reduced movement penalty while using skills to 92%, so almost no penalty at all. I've got my frostbolt up to 4.5 casts per second. It's a little bit higher than what is shown there because I was missing my frenzy stats, and I've gotten my projectile speed to 106%. So really cranking the limits. So quickly, just before I jump into the changes that I've made, I'll also prove that the build hasn't skimped in any areas of DPS and that it still can do pinnacle content as well. So here you can see, I'll show just a few seconds of running through the terrain towards Xesht, which obviously is very simple for this build, to the point where we move faster than the fog. And once we get to Xesht, we've carried our stacks through, sitting at about 150 demon form stacks. And Xesht dies a little bit slower than in some previous iterations and in some of the other builds that I've presented over the course of this league, but as you can see, it's still 5 or 6 seconds, and really what difference does that make when you can blast through your maps 3 times quicker as a result of these changes? Now, quickly before jumping into the changes that I made, I do want to stress that, as I did in my last video, that this very much is the top end. It is an aspirational build, and I would almost go as far as saying I'm not recommending this build as per se for most people. It really is more of a showcase of what is possible, and I'd rather recommend some of my previous videos, some of the original life recoup videos that I presented, the cold variant, the fire variant, there's a lightning variant as well. They're much more realistic in terms of what you can achieve. Some of the pieces here, for instance, these boots, most people are just not going to be able to come by something like this. There are other pieces in here, for instance, even just simply the movement speed socketables into this cost about 40 div. There's a jewel which costs about 30 div. All up, you're looking at something spitballing here in the range of 200-300 div plus, and that is if you craft a lot of the pieces yourself. If you're just buying things and not crafting yourself as well, it's probably going to cost you even more. So it's not cheap, not necessarily practical from that point of view, but again, a showcase of how far a caster build can go in terms of its mapping efficiency. Very quickly, again, before I jump in, I don't normally like putting this forward, but I'm really trying to hit 100 subs, so if you could leave a like and a subscribe, it really does help. But we'll leave it at that. So the changes. What has changed since the last video? Obviously, we're trying to push our speed, both from a movement and cast perspective. Firstly, from a movement speed perspective, one of the main changes we have done is to get a from nothing diamond. Specifically with the Vaal Pact allocation, we are stealing this from our fellow Deadeyes and other fast moving ascendancies and what they typically do, and the idea that we have also taken on board is to be able to pick up this cluster of movement speed nodes here. So a big one being the reduced movement speed penalty from your armor. So those that aren't aware, it doesn't show up in game, but there is a hidden movement speed penalty from different forms, armor, energy shield, etc. armors. So either way, this is a pretty big movement speed boost, and then we've picked up an extra 2, 4, 7 movement speeds. All up, it's in the vicinity of something north of 10 movement speed, which that jewel provides us, so we can allocate all those nodes around the Vaal Pact keystone using that unique jewel that I showed. So that was the first thing, more movement speed as a result of that. In order to be able to get the 4 points that we needed here, we have sacrificed this cluster of life recoup. So before we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points going into here. The way I justified this is, well, we're trying to push movement speed. Our recoup's good enough as it is. Recoup, the increased speed of recoup as well, as a result of the setup that we are moving fast and constantly casting and don't need to stop. We don't need the recoup speed because we're always casting. We never need to slow down. And as a result, we always keep our recoup up. The only downside of that is, as a result, when I have to very first start a map, because recoup spans over 8 seconds to get the max amount of layering, I pretty much have to sit there at the beginning of the map for about 5 or 6 seconds to build up enough stacks, and then I can move forward. So Vaal Pact, more movement speed from nothing jewel. Second thing we did, which I showed earlier, is I crafted these pair of boots and was very lucky. So I previously had another pair of boots with exceptional pair of boots with 2 sockets and the increased effect of socket items. Rather than, I wasn't feeling quite lucky enough to blind slam a Vaal orb onto that one to try and get 3 sockets. So I crafted another pair, so I'd at least have a 2 out of 3 chance of getting 3 sockets. The reason for wanting 3 sockets is it does allow us to socket 3 Farul's runes and get the double bonus effect of each and effectively get another 30% extra movement speed. This is probably the most efficient or simplest way to get a massive boost to your movement speed, but it is not cheap to craft these boots. There is a couple of elements of luck involved, and then even furthermore, so I was super lucky to get this desecrated mod with a further reduction to the movement speed penalty. So there's 60% movement speed just on these boots and a 10% reduced movement speed penalty. So it's massive amount of movement speed just from these boots alone. But got lucky, got the desecrated mod, got lucky that the 3 sockets did happen to roll onto this pair. I didn't quite brick the old upper pair with the Vaal orb, but it did change a hybrid a very high value hybrid res roll on there to a low tier 4 or 5 res roll, and they still haven't sold so I may have to drop the price, and I probably won't lose currency on the old pair, but I'll probably recoup at least what I originally put into crafting them. So that was the second thing. Third thing, and a massive shout out to one of my viewers, Breaker2366, I believe it was, dropped a phenomenal suggestion. So grateful to them, and that is this little puppy. And what does he provide? A haste aura with 20% increased attack and cast speed and 10% movement speed. This synergizes perfectly with this build and provides a massive buff. So to be able to use this, it's 37% of spirit, so quite a substantial amount, but we dropped blasphemy, which was running temporal chain, so we've dropped the defensive layer to use this guy. The reality is we don't need that temporal chains defensive layer, because as you saw in the map demo at the start, everything dies almost instantly anyway, and the synergy from this haste aura is just huge. So that leads into another segue of cast speed. So not just movement speed, I've actually lent into cast speed a lot more as well. As a result of having to drop a few passives from the recoup front, I have substituted that in a way and achieved the same amount of recoup by bumping up my cast speed, because as I've mentioned in previous videos, the quicker you cast, if we bring up the recoup values, and once they start layering up, the quicker you cast, the higher you can get your recoup because of the amount of recoup overlaying on itself. We're damaging ourselves so much quicker as a result of having more cast speed that our recoup ends up being just as good as having gone down the recoup investment route. Furthermore, running charge regulation where we get 15% more skill speed when we have frenzy charges, which we practically have 100% uptime on during mapping because we're freezing things all the time, and getting combat frenzy proccing. Having more cast speed on a gear in duels results in a more multiplicative bonus damage, and as I said, I've got a video, I won't bother showing it in here, but take my word for it, we can get to a point, I get to a point where I'm casting 4.5 frostbolts per second, and it takes around 3 or 4 to cap my Infernal Flame plus the Spell Slinger. You can just have a look here. So the reality is it's quicker once we have our Frenzy stacks, but Infernal Flame's capping out very, very quickly. So the companion, fantastic. The cast speed, and so how we've focused on that cast speed, replaced the max fire res socket in these gloves for increased cast speed for a start. We had already focused on cast speed in all our other gear pieces, so we didn't have to change much there. But another change was leaning into the cast speed a lot more in our duels. There's a very high value roll you can get on the Heart of the Well, which is skill speed. I happen to get one with movement speed as well. The other two stats are pretty much trash, but these duels get astronomically expensive when you have Movespeed and skill speed and anything else of value. Just getting the movement speed and skill speed in itself, I actually rolled this myself, so a bit of gamba. Got lucky, and this is a while ago. I actually had this in my stash, so dug it up, provided a lot of value, and got cast speed on a lot of my other duels here. No, not that one particular. I think this one down here. 4% there, 3% there. Another change which happened as a result of picking up these boots, which don't have barely any resistances, put even tighter strain. Had to get a amethyst, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, ring, which just a massive stack of chaos resistance and 2 high secondary resistance rollers with lightning and fire. This ring is all just simply about getting my resistances capped. The rarity was a bonus roll, but I've also had to go as far as getting corrupted resistance enchanted jewels, I believe almost on all 3. So cold there, lightning there, and cold there. So that was the one downside of taking up those boots and really pushing the movement speed, is the resistance got even tighter. And the 5th thing I changed was I replaced project acceleration, which I originally favored compared to Vilenta's propulsion because of the cost multiplier, and using this does cap our Infernal Flame quite a bit quicker. But Vilenta's propulsion provides us with a massive amount of projectile speed, which on the surface doesn't seem too important, but when we're starting to get to the point of moving as fast as we do, as you can see here, our frostbolts actually trail behind us. And in practice, this doesn't make a massive effect. You can kind of zigzag around, and or even when you face check into a group, there's still that layer of frostbolts at the front of you which still careen into them, and then soon everything follows. But if you take that comparatively compared to Vilenta's propulsion, which again the synergy with our cast speed, it provides more projectile speed for the more cast speed you have, and we're stacking cast speed, so the synergizes really well. And now with Vilenta's propulsion in there, it's still not right out in front of us, but it's a hell of a lot better. And when you kind of just circle around yourself in terms of the map clear and the projectiles just clearing a map, it's just substantially more. You'll just find, well, I'm finding that things are dying off screen a lot more. So picking up that support was great value. So that pretty much is it in terms of the changes. A few little tidbits to highlight that I can show you. We've shown a map under normal circumstances, so Xesht. One fun thing which I want to highlight is if you happen to get lucky during a map, and these shrines happen quite often, and you get a haste shrine while running this setup, it leads to this sort of craziness where you just go into hyperdrive and is a tremendous amount of fun. So we're running an Atlas setup which is very much geared around mapping and includes some buffs to shrines as well. So the buff lasts about 2 minutes, and that's more than enough to pretty much clear the whole map. Another very quick video I want to show in terms of some very quick info as to where to find that Frozen Mandible companion. So as you can see here in the interlude of the campaign at Ashen Forest, there is a little room, as you can see in the top right where I'm moving my mouse over the mini-map, where there's a checkpoint and this unique rare spawns. And what you want to do is you want to get that checkpoint, and before you kill him, you want to mouse over him. And if I'll try and show it a little bit, pause it while I mouse over it. When you look at their nameplate up at the top of the screen, it shows what rare modifiers it has applied to it. And what you're specifically looking for is Haste Aura. So before you use Tame Beast and kill him, you don't want to kill him at all if it doesn't have a Haste Aura. You you don't see the Haste aura, you want to respawn at checkpoint, which just takes you back that few meters. And respawns, resets the boss as well, and then again you check. Don't have the Haste aura, and you keep repeating this. This can take a couple of minutes, but as you can see, this video length is just under 2 minutes, and eventually you get lucky. You see Haste aura, you use Tame Beast, Whisk apply to it, then you can kill it, and you've tamed it, and then you can use him and get the Haste aura. So as you can see there, Haste aura. And that's about it. Thank you all. Thank you all for following. Again, a big shout out for all of those leaving comments. I try to be proactive and respond. Another big shout out to Breaker236566, for calling out the whole frozen mandible tech. And all the best and good luck for all. I know there are a few of you actually pushing and trying out this specific build variant of the movement speed and having quite a bit of success as well. So props to you. It really is great to see some people are actually managing to get this to work. Please continue to do so. Do your own experiments and leave feedback. As I've highlighted, there are things that I don't pick up myself sometimes, and it helps me out, helps you out, helps everyone else out that's following. So it's been fantastic, and again, all the best, everyone.